But the sentence doesn't end there with you. It's the first person of black who the first black person, first Democrat to win a seat in the 8th congressional district in 87 years. What was happening 87 years ago and what's happening in that district right now?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. I will also be the first woman. So all of that is
Mm.
significant. The first woman ever. So at least there has 87 years ago, there were Democrats who ran the district. And now here
Wow.
we are. But I'll tell you what, there are some great citizens in Ohio, but there are some crazy legislators here.
Mm.
Just to give you an example of the crazies, this is the district where, unfortunately, J.D. Vance came out of,
No way.
Middletown
Oh.
area. This is
Oh, wow.
also the district where okay, where the legislators said that it's going to take a civil war if we don't win
Mm.
this time. That
Mm.
that psycho is here in the 8th congressional district. There is
Wow.
there is a another individual out of the 8th, well, it used to be 8th congressional district. The Springfield, Ohio used to be part of the 8th congressional district. So I've
Mm.
got some friends in Springfield, Ohio that I are keeping me informed, and I am still very much connected to Springfield. There are some wonderful people in
Wow.
Springfield, Ohio, and they have assured me that no one is eating their cats and dogs, and none of that crazy stuff is happening here in Ohio.
Mm.
But I'll tell you what, I'll tell you about the 8th congressional district. We are changing. We are changing. And part of that changing is that Democrats who have lived here for a long time are coming out of the closet. They are voting.
Wow.
They are voting. And I have been looking at the statistics and looking at the district. The other thing that's happening is the district has changed because of gerrymandering.
Right.
And it changed in our favor. We have half of Hamilton County, which includes the greater Cincinnati area. And
Okay.
those folks in the past have also not been voting. But I think we have
Mm.
a candidate right now in Vice President Kamala Harris that
Right.
is actually helping them show up in one of our precincts that's almost 100% African American. And I guess it's changed a bit, 10% Hispanic, so about 90% African American
Okay.
at this point. In the last general election during the midterms, only about 200 of those folks voted, right? 7%
Really?
of that district came out and voted.
Wow.
In the early vote count, we already are seeing before yesterday, 272 of them have already showed up to vote.
Wow.
And that's just the early vote count before yesterday. Yesterday was souls to the polls. So my sisters
Mm.
and brothers are getting out there, and we were in that community yesterday, last minute, knocking doors, putting flyers on doors to make sure
Wow.
that people are going to get to the polls this time around. But we
Mm.
haven't seen this kind of energy in this 8th congressional district since Barack Obama ran. And we
Wow.
are excited about what's happening here on the ground, which
Mm.
gives me an opportunity to become the next congressperson in this district. So we're extremely excited about the energy here right now.
That is really exciting. We had Representative Chantel Brown on last week. We've had a number of folks who are seeking to really remind people that Ohio used to be a battleground state. We did not have this reality where the extreme gerrymandering that you all have been grappling with was as firmly rooted as it is. And in fact, you all have a ballot proposal. Your ballot
Yes.
proposal one, and we've been talking about this with a number of the folks from Ohio. And essentially, if you vote yes on ballot proposal one, that is going to allow an end to all of this terrible gerrymandering. And folks, we've been talking about the fact that the way the language on that ballot proposal is worded, it's designed to make you think that if you want to end gerrymandering, you should vote no. It's fugazi. It is a trick. You need to vote yes. They are
Uh,
calling the fix to gerrymandering gerrymandering. So the way the language reads is asking you to say yes to gerrymandering. That's just a word play. Vote yes so that you don't have this luck of the draw, literally, where people are able to draw away your democracy simply based on how they draw those electoral lines. So this is a district that you are very familiar with. That JD Vance came out of here makes it a little bit sweeter. I'm going to be rooting for you a little extra hard than I was already. Talk
well,
to us about the demographics of this district and what your vision for leadership will bring to them that they're not currently getting with this incumbent.
so I'll tell you what, just to show you, before I tell you the demographics, just to show you where the energy is, on
Mm.
the night that JD Vance debated, we were in Middletown, and we had probably a few hundred people in the room watching,
Wow.
on behalf of Tim Walz for our
Mm-hmm.
next vice president. And over at the Republican camp for JD Vance, I want to say they had 15 to 20 people in that room.
Wow.
People in Middletown are not in
Huh.
favor of JD Vance. And I think even if JD Vance can, if he wins this year, I'm sorry, if he loses this year, this will be his last time, his last stint in the Senate,
From
because
your
people
lips to
are not
God's
feeling.
ears, child.
Yes, they
Please,
are
Lord.
not feeling JD Vance. And so we
Mm.
are looking forward to seeing the end to JD Vance, because people really didn't know who this character was.
Right.
And we are learning who he is. But I'll tell you what, the 8th Congressional District, because it's changed so much, I want to say at this point, we're probably 12 to 15% um, of people of color,
Okay.
and 85% um, white in this district. But I'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you what, even when the district was 6% white, before they moved the boundaries, they moved the lines, we overperformed. My campaign
Wow.
overperformed in this district. So that's why we're so excited for what's going to happen in tomorrow's election. And we're
Mm.
looking at the areas that we've targeted this time around, and we're looking at the early vote numbers, and they're looking good. We're hoping that those folks are going to show up on our behalf. They're going to
Yeah.
elect me. They're going to elect Vice President Kamala Harris as our next president. Women are excited about what's happening. And I'm
That's
hearing from
right.
people, I'm hearing from Republicans like I've never heard from Republicans. I had a Republican
Mm.
show up. He reached out to me and asked, when can I come and learn more about you? I want to know
Wow.
who you are. He's from one of the rural areas as part of this district. He drove
Okay.
2 hours to come and meet me. And I told him it's a women's event. This is the last forum. He drove 2 hours to come and meet me. And he said, there's so much energy in the rural areas this time for you. I just want to know who you are, so that when I
Wow.
go and cast my vote, I'm casting my vote. I'm as an informed voter. He was a white
Mm.
Republican, a lifelong Republican. And he says, I will not be voting Republican this year. And he
Mm.
sat and listened to those women and was just like, I'm hearing it's refreshing to sit
Yeah.
here in this room and listen to you informed women. It was Black women and white women in the room. He
All
said,
right.
so excited to hear from you and to hear about your plans for the future. So we're looking forward to tomorrow and seeing the
Mm.
outcomes of this election. My friends and people in the community are saying, pack your bags, you're going to do DC.
Wow.
So I
Oh, I
haven't
love
seen
it.
this kind of energy before this election season. So we're
Mm.
excited.
Mm. So your platform is pretty extensive, and what you are seeking to provide for your constituents is something that is in stark contrast to what the Republicans are offering right now. Give us a sense as to some of the policy positions you've taken. I can already intuit where you are and when it comes to reproductive justice, but talk to us about your plans for where you, or talk to us about where you stand when it comes to education, for healthcare. Talk to us about some of those key issues that we are seeing are really having resonance with folks all across the country. How's it panning out in the 8th Congressional District?
So I'll tell you what, my opponent is a co-sponsor on a bill which would bring a national abortion ban.
Oh,
It
really?
also, yes, it would also
Hmm.
eliminate IVF and birth control. So all of
Wow.
those things, in vitro fertilization, they have toggled back and forth, but my opponent has continued to double down on these issues.
Mm.
So I believe that the people of this district, they've had enough. They've seen enough. They've heard enough. They've had enough. And that's why we're so confident about how we're going to do in tomorrow's election. And
I
and
love that.
I'll tell you, on other issues, we are on issues like education. I believe that we need to strengthen our public education. Here in Ohio, there is an attack on public education. They
Mm.
are looking to take away buildings and put it in the hands of private schools, and taking that we have private vouchers that are taking away
Right.
money out of the public school system. So I am a public school advocate because I believe everyone should have the right to a proper education. So I want to see us strengthen our public education system so that we don't fall into a third world nation status in this country. We need to make sure that all of our citizens are educated. That's where I stand on that issue. And as
Mm.
it relates to some of the other hot button issues, we have we do indeed have an immigrant crisis in this country, because what's happening right now is that we are still a nation which offers asylum, and we should offer asylum to people that we are offering asylum to. But we also need to make sure that there are resources so that when there
Mm.
3,000 or 15,000 asylum seekers, and the governor
Right.
of Ohio, who is a Republican, says yes, these folks can come to our communities, then we need to make sure that our fire, our police, and that they have the resources they need
That's right.
to ensure that our public amenities and services are being offered to all of the folks in our districts. And
Mm.
so we have to make sure that we tie funding to those efforts. And we also need to be listening to people in the communities and talking to people in the communities, which is what our legislators currently are not doing. They're not saying to people in the communities that we're bringing folks into the community that can take some of these
Right.
jobs that are open,
Right.
that
Yep.
can help our communities that are dying continue to sustain themselves. So when people see people who don't look like them coming into the community, they get scared, and they start
Exactly.
thinking that this is like Donald Trump would say, this is an enemy, the enemy within.
Mm-hmm.
When in
Mm-hmm.
actual, when in actuality, folks who are coming into the community are fulfilling needs in many of our communities,
Yes. Yeah.
and they're not committing crimes like Donald
Exactly.
would allude to. The Republican officials in Ohio are saying, no, these people are not committing crimes. We want them here. And yet residents are saying, nobody asked me, right? And so
Mm.
we need to be talking to the residents and talking about the problems and the issues. The businesses in our communities are closing. I mean, closing, restaurants
Yeah.
closing, hotels closing, and they're closing not because we have a bad economy. They're closing because they don't have workers to sustain
Wow.
industries. And now you've got laws in Texas and in not in Florida, but in Texas and some of those border states that will allow some of these folks to continue to work on the farms down there so that we continue to have food production. And people don't understand that. Voters don't understand the impact.
Mm.
If Donald Trump gets his way and he kicks 20 million
Come
um,
on.
immigrants out of this
Yep.
country on day one, which is what he's saying he's going to do, people have no earthly idea of the impact aside from your kids, their friends, and all of that, and the grief that would cause your coworkers. We're talking about people who are serving you in
Right.
restaurants,
Right.
hotels. If you think about all of the immigrants that we come in contact with every day in
Mm.
hospitals and nursing homes, and we remove those 20 million people, we are getting ready to see something like we've never imagined in this country.